Hello wonderful people, it's Wild here. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to build this medieval camp. In this video, we'll be going over how to create 3 different tent styles, how to create a wall for your camp, how to plan and lay out your camp, and all the decorations you'll need to really bring it to life. And the wonderful thing about this camp design is that it's very customizable. Not only can you switch out the colors of things to create a different medieval base, but you can also change out the layout to create perhaps a military base, a mining camp, an early settlement, or whatever you have in mind. Plus, you can expand this design to create as large a camp as you like. Alright, let's get building. So the first job is finding a location. Now I'm going to be building my medieval camp in a spruce biome like this one, and I've got a couple options for places. I'd like to place it along this large river here, and I want my ground to be fairly flat. Something like over here would make it a lot harder to place in my tents and the wall, so I'm going to avoid a lot of hills. Even around here, we've got a lot of caves I need to fill in before building, so I think I'm going to go with this side of the river here. Once I've got that area selected, you need to decide whether you want a really large camp or a smaller camp. I'm having a medium-sized one, and you can always add as many or as few tents as you like. I'm then going to go through and clear out the trees in a nice generous area. For a camp about the size that I'm making it, you'll need an area that is about 50 blocks by 50 blocks, and then I like to clear a little bit more than that to allow room for terraforming. So let's get rid of some of these trees. Alright, I've done lots of tree chopping and my last few leaves are just decaying now. Now you can see that the area I've cleared is a bit bigger than my 50 by 50 square, but that's going to give me a little bit more space for building and placement, and it will mean that I can go back in and place in some trees strategically to frame my build later. The next step is to terraform, so I'm going to start by getting rid of any of these kind of blobs of cobblestone, or if you're in a different biome, any features that are standing out a bit too much. And then I'm going to go ahead and round off my coastline, make my mountains just a little bit kind of flatter so that way I have more options for building, and just prepare the space for our camp. Okay, I'm all terraformed. You can see that I've flattened out this large area, and I can go back in and add in a bit more terrain around the build once I've placed everything in. I've smoothed off the coastline here, and you don't have to do this, I just wanted to give it a bit of a more natural look. And then you can see that I've also replaced all of the coarse dirt with grass, and I've kept the podzol out towards the edges of this area because we'll be using this spruce colored wood throughout the build, and I just want it to stand out a little bit more from the terrain than from the podzol. Alright, we are ready to get building. We're going to start by creating the largest tent. The materials you'll need for this large tent are on your screen now. Here is our outline for the largest tent size. You can see that it is a circle with an interior diameter of 11 blocks across, and then at the front of the tent we can see there is a 3-block gap where we would have a tent wall on the other sides. Now for the walls of my tent, I'm going to be using a mixture of white wool, calcite, and some of these mushroom stem blocks. But you can leave out some of these supplies if you like. I just like the way it adds a bit more texture and dimension. I'm going to be using mostly white wool, then I'll have calcite as my next highest material use, and then just a little bit of the mushroom stem block here and there. First, I'm going to start by building up 2 high all the way around this outline. Now you can either add in these textured blocks as you go, or you can build out of one supply and then come back and add in the texture later. It's just about finding a system that works for you. I find it easiest in creative to add in the texture afterwards, because that way you can get the shape down pat and then add in all of that detail. But in survival, when you've got limited resources, I think it's probably easiest to go in with all of your texture blocks as you go. It's always a good idea to take a step back and check you like the way the distribution is coming along. And I think since I am in creative, I will switch over to building with one supply and then texturizing afterwards. Okay, so we've got the shape in. Let's add in a few more of these mushroom blocks, just a couple here and there. And maybe one more on this side. and then I'll go in with some calcite, and I'm having a little bit more of this. I'm also going to make sure I'm not mirroring the other side, so I had a calcite block here on that side, so I don't want to do the same here. There we go, there's our first layer. For the next layer, I'm going to start by adding an extra block on these three wide sections. And just checking I don't want to add any extra texture here, let's go in with a little bit more of the calcite. One here, and let's see, maybe, well, that's going to end up in a line. Let's leave that one as it is. So it'll look like this. For the next layer, we're going to be building diagonally across this way. So we're going to need to grab out some sort of temporary block. I find that a different colored wool to what I'm using in my build is always useful. So let's go with some blue wool. And I'm going to place these in these corner gaps. I'm also going to be building over the top of these gaps, so some temporary blocks here might be helpful as well. And since we will be building over the top of here shortly, I'm going to leave that gap free. So for this next layer, I'm going to be building up 2 high across the tops of these diagonals like this. So you can see I'm going over these corner blocks that we've added in. And then I'm going to join them up over the top of the blue blocks or the temporary blocks that we've added in these gaps. I can also go ahead and remove these temporary blocks and add in some texture. So let's add a mushroom block here. Let's come around this side, and I think I might add a couple there and there. Maybe one here. I think that's good. Let's go in with the calcite next. If you're enjoying today's video and would like to access additional benefits like world downloads for this and all my other builds, as well as access to a multi-world server where you can build alongside me, check out my Patreon. I would love to have you join my community, and I'd really appreciate your support. And I think that looks pretty good. I'm also going to connect over the top of this gap here because we're creating a doorway. And actually, you know what? I think calcite was the right choice there. So you should find now that when you look from above, we have another circle, but it's a little bit smaller. The next layer is going to be out of colored wool, and you can customize these to match the color scheme for your camp. So I'm going to add a temporary block into these kind of corner gaps here, and that'll give me an outline to be able to place onto. So I'm going to alternate between red and light blue wool, and I'm going to go across 3, then I'm going to go 2, then 2 again, and 3, and so on. Making sure I follow that alternating pattern. There we are. Let's remove these temporary blocks. And once again, we will have created a circle that is slightly smaller than the one before. Now we're on to creating the sort of roof of our tent, and it's going to swoop upwards. I'm going to start by building the whole thing out of one supply and add back in my texture later. And for this step of the build, I actually recommend doing it this way, even if you are in survival. We can use the excess supplies that we might have left over to create some more tents later. So I'm first creating a circle like this, where we're sitting one on top of each of these corners, and I've placed in temporary blocks to add the connecting corner blocks. Let's remove those, and you can see we've got 5 long sides here and then the 1 blocks connecting them. Next we need to come up a layer, so let's add in a temporary block, and I'm just going to follow that outline we've created. Creating a small circle like this. Let's go up another layer on each side, adding in some temporary blocks to do so. And we're almost at the top of the point now. To fill in this kind of square section, I'm going to place a white wool or a white colored tent block in these corners like this. Then I'll remove the temporary blocks, and I'm going to switch over to one of the colors I've used in my decoration. I'm going to use light blue. I'll build up 2 high in each of these gaps, and then I'm going to use another temporary block to place one in the center, and I'll add 2 blocks there like this. So we've got the shape complete now. Let's go back in with our texture blocks just to break things up a little bit. Making sure you take a step back and checking how you like the distribution. With a circular build, it's important that you check this from all the sides. I think that's pretty good for the mushroom blocks. Let's go in with the calcite next. I think that looks pretty good. I might put a calcite up in here. There we are. Let's move on to adding some decorations. For all of these, I'm going to be using a mixture of spruce materials. I'm going to start by coming inside the build, and from the very top, I'm going to build down with some stripped spruce logs. I'm then going to take some spruce trapdoors and place them 2 high on each of the sides of this post. And this is a good place to add in a couple of torches. You might need a few more. I'm going to place a few on these outer walls. There we are. Coming back out now, I'm going to create a little archway for the door with a couple of stairs and some more of these trapdoors. We'll be creating a small canopy over the top of the doorway in just a bit. On the inside of the doorway though, I'm going to place in 3 banners. I've just used white banners here, but you can have a bit of fun and maybe put on some medieval heraldry onto these. Next, let's add some designs on the outside using the spruce. Let's start on the centers of these 3 wide sides. I'm going to build up 3 high with spruce fences and place a stair on top of that, facing upwards and outwards like this. I'm then going to add an upside down stair facing back towards the build just by placing on the top edge of this stair, like that. Then I can add in 1 more spruce fence, and I'll place a trapdoor on top of here and a slab behind that. I'm also going to place a button onto the side of this stair. And let's do this on the other 2 sides. One more side to go. Of course, we don't need to do the front side because we've got the doorway there. There we go. Next, I'm going to take some spruce fences, and I'm going to be finding this 2 wide section of wall and building up with the fences like this, and then I'll build up 3 high with some fences above that. I'm going to do this on each side, so from the corner it'll look like there's 2. I'll also be doing this on the front side. Next, we're going to be adding an edge going around the build. So we're going to be using some spruce slabs and some trapdoors for this. So we've already got 1 slab here. I'm going to place in a trapdoor beside that and then a slab. And I'll do that to the other side. And let's do this on each of the flattish faces. I'm also going to be doing this along the front. So we got to start by placing 1 in the center because we don't have one already on this side. Next up, I'm going to be placing some spruce slabs on each of the diagonal blocks. Back to the trapdoors, we'll place 1 on top of each of these fences. Then to fill in the corner, I'll place 1 in and then 1 underneath, and I'll also be placing them underneath these slabs as well. There we go, and you can see that we've got a nice geometric design. To create the canopy over the front of the doorway, I'm going to start by counting 2 blocks out from the edge of the door and building up 3 high. So 2, and then on that third block, 3 high. Next up, I'm going to use some red and light blue wool or whatever colors you've used in this decoration. I'm going to build out 1 block from each of the sides and 2 blocks in the center, making sure I line up my colors. Then I'm going to just place in a couple of string where I need to place in some carpet. So we've got 1 here, and 1 here, and I'll continue the stripe along with the carpet. There we are. Next up, we need to add a flag to this tent. So I'm going to be building up 4 high, 1, 2, 3, 4, and placing my flag off of this. Now you can have your flag fly in whatever direction you like, but it's important that it faces the same direction as any other flags nearby. So I'm having the color that matches with my build down at the top. And then I'm going to be switching to white wool for a longer piece of flag coming off from that. That's going to give us a lovely tapered look. I'm also going to come back down here, and to match the other sides, I'll place in a spruce trapdoor and a fence going down like this. And last but not least for this tent design, I'm going to add in 4 more buttons just on the bottom of the points of this coloured section of the tent. Next up, let's create some smaller triangular shaped tents. The materials you'll need for those are on your screen now. Here is our tiny outline for the smaller triangular tents. You can see that the walls are going to be about 5 blocks long and they're 3 blocks apart, and you'll need to allow a block on each side for decorations. To create this tent, I'm going to start by building up 2 high on either side with a mixture of my white tent building materials. And just check I like the distribution. There we go. We're going to come in 1 block on either side and build up 2 high once again. And go in with our texture blocks again. There we are. And for the final layer, I'm just going to be building up 1 high like this. And I go in and remove all of these temporary blocks. Now that we've got the shape, we need to add the details. I'm going to start by adding a beam going the whole length of this tent. So I'll add in a temporary block, and then using strip spruce logs, I'm going to extend 1 block out from either side. Just like that. Next, we need to create some edges using some spruce stairs. So I'll place an upside down spruce stair onto these lower blocks of the 2 high sections. And on top of that, I'll add in right way up stairs. I'm then going to take some trapdoors and place them onto the visible flat sides, as well as down here inside. Just like this. On top of here, I'm going to be adding in a stair as well and a spruce planks. Let's do this on the other end of the build. Be sure to join my Discord server if you're creating today's build. That way you can share some pictures. I would love to see how your camp comes together. There we go. Next, we need some spruce fences, and I'm going to be placing these down from the end logs. Perfect. Now at the back of the build, I'm going to be placing in a few banners. So I'm going to first start by adding an extra trapdoor on either side, and then I'm going to be placing banners onto all of the trapdoors, as well as 3 banners going down the back like this. And you can see how it looks like the wool from the tent is draped down the back edge. Next, we need to finish off the top. So I'm going to add in a couple of slabs and then 3 trapdoors in the center. I'm also going to add a trapdoor to either end. Next, let's go in with some fences. I'm going to be placing them up either side. Finally, we need a few tripwire hooks, 3 along either edge. And we've got ourselves a beautiful little tent. Now let's create a small circular tent. You'll need these materials to create it. Here is the outline for our small circular tent. You can see that it's basically a 5x5 square but with the corners chopped off, and there is a gap there for the door. Once again, I'll be using a mixture of white wool, calcite and mushroom stem, and I'm going to start by building up 2 high all the way around the outline. And I'll go in and add in some texture. And with some mushroom now. There we go. Next, I'm going to be adding a temporary block in this doorway so that I can add 1 block on top of each of these 3 long sides. There we are, and I can remove that block. Let's add some temporary blocks next in each of these corners. And I'm going to be building up a U shape over the top of each of the points. There we go, and I can come inside the build to remove the temporary blocks. Once again, let's go in and add a little bit of texture. I want to keep in mind where the texture is sitting on the rest of the build. And it really is about taking a step back to check you like how it all looks. There we go. Next up, we need to add 1 block on top of each of the flat sides like this. And in fact, I think I might make this one here a mushroom block, and let's add some calcite in here. There we are. Finally, I'm going to add in a temporary block so I can build up 2 high on the top. And let's see, let's finish off with a mushroom block at the very top. Perfect. So here's our base tent shape. We need to add some decorations. I'm going to start by adding some decorations to our doorway. I'll build up 2 high with fences like this, add in a spruce stair in the center, and then I'm going to add a trapdoor to either side. On the other 3 sides, I'll do the same sort of thing, adding in these fences to start with. Just like that. But then on top of these, I'll add in a trapdoor and then drop down and add in another trapdoor. There we go. Now behind each of these upper trapdoors, I'm going to add in a spruce slab, including these 2 at the front. And then to connect them up, I'm going to be placing in a spruce trapdoor. And I actually want to place this onto the white blocks below so it drops down a layer here. Perfect. Next, we need to add some fences going up to the top of the tent. So on each of the flat sides, I'll just build up following the shape. I'm going to do the same thing on the front, but just starting on this block here. Now on the very top, I'll build up 3 blocks with my fences, and then I'm going to use one of my accent colors from my other tents to create a little flag like this. Let's see, I actually might have this one come backwards. You want each flag to fly in a unique shape. There we go. Finally, I'm going to come inside, and it's always a good idea to place in a little bit of lighting, and on the front above the door, I'm going to place in a banner just like this. Alright, so I've placed in all of my tents now, and of course you can expand this camp to be as large as you like by adding in as many tents as you like. Now we need to add a wall going around here, and I'm going to be using a mixture of spruce, dark oak fences for that. I'm going to start in one corner of the build and just start marking out 1 block high a shape for my wall. And I want a really natural shape here, so I'm just curving around the build, not following any particular pattern, not going for any particular shape, just something that will enclose all of these tents. I want to allow a little bit of space for adding in extra decorations inside, so I'll keep that in mind. And you can see how I'm making my curves quite dramatic here. let's see, I think I'll go 3, then we'll have 2, and I'm gonna curve. Actually, you know what? Let's go 3 here, and I'm gonna curve back in. 3 here. Maybe this way. I might curve out again here. Once you've got a bit of your wall in place and you've created an outline, we can start adding in a bit of height. But you just want to make sure you're happy with the shape first. Every wall is going to be a little bit different because every wall would be going around a different shaped camp. You want to leave a 5-block gap or so around about the front for your gate, and I find it's easiest to work from one side and come around and then switch and come from the other side. Alright, I've got the outline for my wall, and looking from above you can see that I've gone with a very natural curving shape. I've allowed enough space for me to decorate inside and enough space around the builds so that you can see everything. And you can see at the front here I've got a little gap where I've curved back in on either side to create an entryway. To create the wall itself, we'll be using a mixture of these spruce logs, dark oak logs, and dark oak fences. And what we want to do is create the look of a wall made out of logs. So we're going to have it at different heights. I'm going to be adding either groups of 2, 3, 4, or 5 on top in a random pattern like this. And sometimes I'll switch out this spruce for some dark oak. Each of these is going to be a little bit different. So you just want to take your time piling up the logs until you get a look you're happy with. Let's switch to some dark oak here and go up maybe 3 for this one. Let's go up 4 here. Once you've got a section of wall complete, we're going to add a little bit of dimension. So to do that, I'm going to add in a few extra logs here and there out of the spruce and the dark oak. And let's add a couple of dark oak here. And in fact, I'll build up just behind it so we can see how it's coming together. Then I'm going to go in with some dark oak fences and add those on top. I'll add some in here. Let's see. I think I might add a couple here. And I'm going to add one to the side on that side. I'm also going to add a couple of fences on top of some of these logs. So each section of the wall will look something like this. And I like to go around and add in all of my different height logs first, and then add in all of the dimension afterwards. So let's go up 3 high here, maybe 5 high here, and keep going. Alright, I've added in all of these walls now and it looks fantastic. You can see how I've continued this texturized pattern all the way around the walls, mixing in some of the dark oak as we go just to add a little bit more dimension. You'll also notice that inside the build, I've also added in these same logs just to add a bit of texture to the flat surface. Now that we've enclosed our camp, we need to ground it with some dirt. So I'm going to be using some coarse dirt and rooted dirt to start building out the shape of the courtyard here. Then once I add in some more of my decorations, which we'll do next, I can bring the floor out to meet. So let's start off by creating a rough outline using some of this coarse dirt. And of course, just like with the shape of the outline and the layout of your camp, this will really depend on the size you're going with, your location, and how you envision your camp coming together. Once you've got a little bit of the area marked out with one of your supplies, I like to mix in a bit of rooted dirt and lots of packed mud as well to provide lots of texture. Texture is the aim of the game when it comes to medieval builds because it's what gives it that rustic, welcoming feeling. And just like with the texturizing on the walls of the tents, it's important to take a step back or in survival use some scaffolding to build up to calculate the distribution of all of your texturized ground. Let's keep going and expand it out this way to create a path. This dirt path is all built in, so let's add in some of the key decorations. Let's first start by creating a little wood store. I'm going to start by building up 3 high in my back left corner with some spruce fences. I'm then going to count 4 across, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and on that 5th block I'm going to build up 3 high. I'll count 2 blocks forward and build up just 2 high and in front of this post as well. Now we can add in our canopy, and I'm going to be using the same wool colors that I've used as my accent and just creating a stripe like this. Once I get to the other side, we're all complete and we can add in our wood. So I'm going to add in a couple of logs going this way. And then I think I might have let's have one coming this way as well, and I'll add one on top of here. And I want to make sure that's facing forward. Then I'm going to be using some campfires to create the look of little timber logs. So I'll place these in at different angles here and there, and then if I right click them with a shovel, it'll put them out, and look at that, it looks like tiny little oak logs. The next decoration I'll be using are some banners. So to create these, I'm going to start by placing a stripped spruce log here, followed by a beehive. I'm going to surround the stripped spruce log with a couple of spruce trapdoors, and then I'm going to place spruce buttons onto all of the sides of the beehive. There we go. Next up, I'm going to build up 2 high with some stone brick walls, and then I'm going to add 3 of my oak fences on top. When I get to the top, I'll add in a beehive and then a stair facing backwards like this. I'm going to place in a couple of trapdoors now. And then I'm going to hang my banner. Once again, using our accent colors. There we go. What a great way to frame the gate. Next up, we're going to want some places to sit inside of our camp. So first, let's make a little campfire area. I'm going to start by creating a rough shape out of some gravel in the ground, just to ground the area and to provide some separation from the rest of the camp. So once I'm happy with that, and I think that's pretty good, I'm going to place a campfire in the center, and then I'm going to use a couple of logs to create some benches. Let's have a 3-wide one there and a 2-wide one just here like that. Then for some decorations, I might place in a lantern here or there. Let's add one here, and I'm going to add in a couple of pots as well to stand in as cups. So there's one simple seating area. Let's create another one, this time with a bench. For this, I'm going to start by creating the bench using some spruce trapdoors. I'll flip one up like this, and then place 3 trapdoors onto that, and flip one up on the end to create a bench. And you should be able to place things on top of your bench. In fact, I'm going to place a lantern. Next, let's create some seats. For these, I'm going to be using campfires, and you want to make sure the top logs are facing towards your bench. Then I'll use a shovel to put them out, and I'm going to place some more spruce trapdoors for the backs of the chairs. I'm going to use this same table design both outside and as well as that inside the large tent. Let's check out how these decorations can be added to our camp, as well as many other decorations you can use. Here I am at my finished camp, and let's take a look around. Right at the front of the gate, you can see the banners we've created, but we've also got some different decorations out here. Here we've got a little cart with our horses retired inside, and on the other side I've got a pile of logs, and you can find tutorials for both these decorations and all the other decorations you'll see inside in the description below. Let's head on in. I'm going to walk in along my pathway, and I'm going to pass by a cannon here. Now I've decided to style this as a military camp, so we've got some cannons and weapons around, but you could easily style this as perhaps a mining camp or an early settlement. So of course we've got the cannon and some cannonballs, and off to this side I've set up this tent as a weaponry. Turning back towards the center of the camp now, you can see the seating areas that we created before, and I like to have those in a central location just to kind of ground the space and invite you in. Let's check out what we've got off to the right hand side. Here you can see we've got the wood store that we created earlier, as well as an archery range, and this is perfect inside my military style base. We've got different targets at different heights, including an armor stand, and we've got a fletching area. You'll also notice that the camp is flanked by 2 of these watchtowers with their tall flags, and if we climb up, we can see right out over the wall to protect our base. Next, let's have a look at the left side of the camp, where we have our little triangular tents. Now, I styled these as places for the knights and warriors working here in the military base to stay. And you can see I've placed in some beds and some barrels and chests, as well as some lanterns. And on the floor I've got some of this coarse dirt as well as some hay. But of course you could style these however you like, perhaps with some trades in them. Let's head over to the next one, and I'm going to go past my bell for alerting any important messages. In this one you can see I've got the same things, but I've made the layout a bit different just so they each feel unique. In the corner of the camp I've set up a well, and it's a perfect place to put it in between these two buildings. You'll also notice while I'm back here that all around the buildings I've placed in lots of lush grass, as well as some of these bushes up against the wall. I've used spruce since I'm in a spruce biome, but you could use whatever leaves you like. Over here I've got a couple of horses. You could dedicate an entire tent to a stables perhaps, but I've just got them out the front of my main tent. Speaking of, let's head inside. Another thing you'll notice all throughout this base is that I've created these banners with the colours that I've used throughout. And this is the perfect medieval touch, so I've got some over here, I've got some on the outside, and I've got some inside the tents as well. As we come on into the great tent, past our banners, you'll see that I've placed in a storage area with a couple of swords, of course. I've got some more of my banners, we've got some barrels, and then we've got our table that we created earlier. At the back I've placed in a few extra benches for when the cooking's done and we can place all the food in here. And you could even have a bit of fun by using some things like cake, some bread, maybe some steak, and grabbing out some item frames, just to add a little bit of life to your town. Let's add some bread and some steak. Looking from above with my camp, I think it's very important to think about the flow of how you would move about. So I've kept the center fairly open. As you can see, there is a nice big inviting pathway with most of the interesting things around the outside, inviting you to explore and check everything out. So now you have an incredible medieval camp. If you enjoyed today's tutorial, I would really appreciate it if you consider liking and subscribing. It would really help me out. And check out my Patreon to support me further. I'll see you in another video.